Welcome, everybody. I'd like to call the meeting to order. May I have an approval of the agenda?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
And those opposed? Motion carries. Jen Akem, could you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Y'all please rise. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First, I want to thank everybody for being patient. I understand we're running a little bit late tonight, as we seem to be doing regularly. And actually, we had to recess because we didn't finish our initial meeting. So as soon as we're done here, feel free to be free to join us back in the superintendent's office as we continue our earlier meeting. With that, let's move forward with announcements and recognitions. And Mark Rand, I believe you have announcements for us this evening.
I do. Thank you. Spring break will take place March 29th through April 5th this year, with classes resuming on Monday, April 8th. We are quickly approaching the annual Beloit Memorial High School Hall of Fame ceremony set for April 12th at 9 a.m. The ceremony will take place in the school's Barkin Arena and is open to the entire community. This year's inductee is Evelyn McDonald, class of 1982. The award-winning journalist and author of 3 books is being inducted during the 20th anniversary of the program. The Jazz One Band from Beloit Memorial High School will soon travel to New York City to participate in the Essentially Ellington Jazz Festival, to learn from and play with jazz masters such as the great Wynton Marsalis. Students are in the middle of fundraising efforts, including a performance on La Casa Grande on April 12th at 7:30 p.m. More details will be posted on our news and events calendar on how you can help these students attend this fantastic and well-deserved opportunity. The Modern Woodman Oratorical Contest will be held in the next couple of weeks, giving students the chance to express their thoughts on this year's topic, A Person Who Has Overcome. Students in grades 5 through 8 are eligible to compete, with the top winners from each school earning the chance to compete in the district-wide competition at the Colac Education Center. We wish all contestants good luck. We are proud of our students at all levels and variety of competitions, and anticipate even more achievements in store for our district this remaining term of the school year. Meanwhile, please keep our district events listing as a webpage favorite to keep on top of the many concerts, plays, and other events that are open to the community. The link is available on our home site, www.beloitschools.net. This concludes March announcements.
Thank you, Mark. And with that, I'd like to hand it over to Melissa Badger for recognitions, awards, and presentations, please.
Thank you. I have 4 great recognitions for you all tonight. So I'd like to start by calling up one of our Beloit Memorial High School students, Hayden Sharmer. If you could please join me at the podium. I'd like to mention that Hayden here was the local honoree for the Prudential Spirit of Volunteerism Award, and in fact had put so many hours and work together in his special projects that he received the National President's Award on Volunteerism, which is just absolutely incredible and speaks volumes about what this student has done. And in addition to volunteering for various projects, he's part of the wrestling team, cross-country team, National Honor Society, academic award winner. He has also taken 4th last year at Skills USA for the state of Wisconsin in masonry. He's also volunteered with coaching youth softball, assisted with Kids at Hunger, and Raft Middle School meets for the school district. So he's been keeping busy in addition to a special project with taking in kittens for paws. So it's just absolutely incredible. And reading over this, to have such a caring personality is just amazing. So not only do we have students that are bright and talented, but also giving of themselves. We're very proud of you and congratulate you on the award, and I'm honored to be able to present this certificate of appreciation to you for demonstrating Purple Knight spirit through outstanding volunteerism and earning national honors by receiving a President's Volunteer Service Award. Congratulations.
Thank you, Melissa. And I just want to say thank you, Hayden, for coming tonight. And okay, so this is a little awkward, I got to say. So I don't want to gloat, but I want to say, Hayden, I'm very proud of you. And I think that what you're doing is tremendous. And I was hoping that you might say a few words, but I know that you would like to say, had you had the opportunity and wanted to partake in it, that the volunteering that you do pays back multifold. So although he's volunteering his hours, what he receives in dividends from helping the young kids and seeing the kittens that wouldn't have been viable survive and get adopted into homes really pays dividends at home. And I see it as mom. So congratulations, Hayden. John Winkleman, please.
Okay, just briefly. So, Hayden, we get to spend Tuesday nights with your mom, right? So our we have deep thoughts on how you deal with that at home. Okay, so but you do great work. I'm sure that carries over at home as well, and we may be coming to you for some cues here to see where that goes. So congratulations, nice job, Hayden. So.
Our next recognition is also about volunteerism. This is a community member, so I would like to ask Luller B. Ray from the Merrill School community and Katie Smullen, the Merrill School principal, to please join me at the podium. I have to say, it's really our community partnerships and volunteers that make a difference in our schools. When our students succeed, when they do great volunteer projects, it's usually because we have great family members, great friends, and great community members behind them, pushing them along. So here to tell you a little bit more about what this outstanding volunteer has done is Principal Smullen.
Thank you for recognizing Mrs. Ray. Mrs. Ray is a devoted volunteer at Merrill. She has great grandchildren who attend Merrill currently, in addition to her children and grandchildren who have attended Merrill in the past. Mrs. Ray greets students at the door every morning, 5 days a week, 7:45 a.m. to 8:20 a.m. She also helps serve lunch every day from 11:30 to 1 p.m. She stays to clean up afterwards. She attends every home and school meeting and every home and school event. What I appreciate most about Mrs. Ray, in addition to her incredible dedication to Merrill, is her honesty. She helps keep us all on track, and she holds students and staff alike to high standards. She doesn't mess with second best, not even close. As first-year principal, she gave me a lot of encouragement and strength, and she would watch my comings and goings when her house was on the other side of Merrill, the parking lot. She continues to be that voice of encouragement and support for students, for staff, and for me. She truly embodies the Merrill spirit of we are family. We love her dearly, and we have a few gifts for you, Mrs. Ray. So if we have a couple Merrill students who came, Brooklyn and Katie, Mrs. Hunt, our secretary, and Ms. Schulte. We have other Merrill staff who came to recognize you, so we have a few little gifts for you, and if you'd like to say anything.
Thank you very much. I'm not good at talking that much, but I love Merrill School. It's one of the best schools in Beloit. I have been volunteering over there since 1997. I retired from work then, and so I started volunteering at Merrill School. And some of my kids went to Merrill School. This one right here, Brenda. Some of my grandkids went to Merrill School. You can't hear me? And now I got great grandkids in Merrill School. And I love Merrill School. It is a wonderful school. Sometimes people don't say nice things about Merrill School and the neighborhood, but it is a nice neighborhood. And usually when things happen in the neighborhood, it's from people that have came in from out of Beloit, from Chicago, Detroit, New York, and around, and cause the trouble. It's not Beloiters that do that. and I love the school. Love you all. Thank you.
And I do have to say, we've done a lot of recognitions at Mrs. Ray at assemblies and whatnot in school, but it was Mr. McNeil who said that he sees her at all the Merrill events, and he said, has she been recognized publicly lately? I said, no, not lately. So I appreciate Mr. McNeil to say it was due time. Thank you.
Steve?
And if I could have you right back up for one more thing. Not quite finished yet. I have the joy of giving this to you because obviously you have a good heart for the students and they're so lucky to have you, and you're obviously appreciated by them and the staff. We have this in recognition of generous and dedicated volunteerism to the students, families, and the staff of Merrill Elementary School.
Thank you so
Thank you
much.
so much.
Steve?
I just also want to thank Mrs. Ray. She is an incredible human being, and if our world had more of her, we would be in much better shape. She is there every single day, greeting the kids and adults, by the way. And I get around to every building, and I can tell you there's no building that's better protected than Merrill with that lady in charge. So.
Thank you, Stephen. And Ms. Ray, on behalf of the board, I want to say that every school needs a foundation, and we have strong foundations, but you are part and parcel of the foundation of Merrill, and you make Merrill the school that it is, and we appreciate you and all that you do for the school district. Thank you so much.
Our next recognition for tonight is a person who has also had a big impact on students. So I'd like to call up one of our district retirees, Mark C. Anderson.
Hey now.
It's actually pretty appropriate that I get to be up here because Mark was recently inducted into the Wisconsin Sports Hall of Fame, the State Sports Hall of Fame. And my husband actually worked with you on the football team. He has many great memories, as he likes to keep showing the tape over and over and over again. So he was inducted along with Jim Caldwell of the Baltimore Ravens and former Packers coach Mike Sherman. So Mark is class of 1970? Correct. That's right, BMHS class of 70. He retired in 2010, but just as history lessons are long remembered, so is his great contribution to BMHS football over 24 seasons. Some of his coaching roles included freshman coach, sophomore coach, offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, and head coach. He earned Coach of the Year in the Big 8 Conference in 1998 when the team reached the third round of the WIAA playoffs. He then earned the Beloit Daily News All-Area Coach of the Year when they reached the Division I semifinals the following year, defeating the team that they lost to in 1998. And though retired from teaching, he's still coaching, currently as assistant coach for Beloit College football.
Well, thank you. Certainly, football's the ultimate team game, and anybody that achieves any accolades or anything whatsoever does not do so on his own merit entirely. And we've been blessed to have lots of great kids, lots of great athletes, great parents, great community. When you look around the room and you see this young man who's volunteering and this lady here who's guarding the school single-handedly, it's very difficult to argue that point. Melissa asked me earlier on, she said, well, would you talk for 5 or 6 minutes? And I said, well, oh, me? Would that be hard? Well, so I said, what topic? She said, well, maybe your coaching journey. Well, I never really thought about a coaching journey, perhaps, but I guess as a young man or a kid growing up in Wisconsin in the 50s and 60s, I was blessed to have around me just great men. Men I went to church with were veterans of World War II and just good, upstanding guys. My dad was as good a man as ever walked the earth. My uncles were great people. And it came natural to me to look at these guys and think that's the way men are supposed to behave. And they're supposed to protect the people that need protecting. They need to stand up for things and so on. And I always thought those were just great qualities. And then I met my football coaches, and they seemed to sort of epitomize those very qualities as well. As time went on, and I played ball at the high school, and later on, my father talked me into going to college. Nobody in my family had gone to college before, so he talked me into going to school. So I went and played a little football at Stevens Point, and up there. And I went up there initially to be a game warden. I envisioned a shotgun, a dog, and a pickup truck. And then they said we have to do chemistry. I said, whoa. I said, I want to know where that shotgun is right now. Well, there was no shotgun, and chemistry and I didn't get along, and soil samplers and water samples and all this other jazz. I had nothing to do with a dog or pickup truck. So I switched majors, and I'd been taking history as a minor, and I made that my major, and I started taking a bunch of coaching classes. And then I thought back, and I said, well, you know, those men in my life that were pretty influential, and my coaches, you know, maybe that's something I'd like to do. So what I tried to do is kind of follow the path of some of those coaches and teachers and so on that I had. And that's kind of how I tried to, I guess that's my journey, if you want to, put it in that way. So I spent 4 years up at Maple Northwestern, and then I was actually 31 years teaching in Beloit and coaching football here actually for 35 years. 36 years actually. And so I tried to put my time in and tried to kind of do the right thing and be the right kind of guy for people to look at. And, you know, maybe I did that well, maybe I didn't do well all the time, but I think that's kind of how I tried to bring myself along. So anyway, you don't do that alone. My family certainly was very supportive. My wife of 38 years, one woman, 38 years. I got friends that got three, anymore. And, but certainly my family was supportive. Certainly I came in contact with just great kids, great coaches, great community members, and so on. And as I talked to our present-day coaches, you know, I find them to have many of the same qualities. So, you know, I think obviously football struggled a little bit here, and if I could magically spew out some solution, believe me, I am not all that terribly shy. So, but it's going to be a long, sort of hard pull. You got to hire as many coaches as you can, teacher coaches. You know, I remember when I came to Beloit, and I was hired by Bill Decker. Some of you guys remember Bill Decker. And he was the epitome of hard-nosed, let me tell you. And he said, okay, Mark, here's the deal. I'm going to offer you a job as a history teacher, and you're going to coach football, and you're going to coach some wrestling. He didn't say there were a lot of options involved there. And that was okay. And I think things turned out okay for me. So anyway, I guess on behalf of the, those kids I coached, those parents and all those folks and the community, I'm, humbled, I guess, to receive an award like that. But I did get a really nice ring.
Yeah, that's right.
So I have
Attaboy.
So anyway, I talked to Jimmy Caldwell. We were up there, and I had my little granddaughter with me, and I said, Jimmy, show her your Super Bowl ring. Now, if this is a nice ring, I don't know that you can get a ring bigger than this, but let me tell you, that one is, and it's all diamonds too. So anyway, but I thank you for this recognition. It's very special to me, and certainly, hopefully, for the many kids, coaches, and so on that I've worked with over the years. Thank you.
I do have to say that it was special for the students, because my husband had great coaches like you, and now he's coaching our son and giving his time for that. So you have inspired people, and I get to be the one to give this to you on behalf of the board in recognition of outstanding contributions to and exemplary coaching of Beloit Memorial High School football and in celebration of the induction into the Wisconsin Sports Hall of Fame. Congratulations.
John?
Just quickly, congratulations, Mark. I think Mark, I mean, he focused on football and some of the stuff he's done, but I know that he was also an excellent teacher, and we need to not forget that. Lots and lots of people that I listen to talk about having been taught by Mr. Anderson and the things that he was able to work and help them understand through history, social studies. And I had the privilege of working with Mark as he worked with the teachers group. You know, it used to be back in the days we did consensus bargaining, which meant we spent weeks in this particular room. And we agreed and we disagreed and we figured out how to come together, and it was a great experience. And I learned a lot from Mark about education. I learned a lot about how we should approach things, and maybe he learned a tiny little bit from me. You never know. But I learned to appreciate his thoughts, because he had some very great thoughts about education and how we do things. So let's not forget that as well. So congratulations, Mark.
Michael?
I just wanted to say thanks, Coach. You know, it's just been awesome knowing you and being able to work with you. I was scared to death of you in high school, you know. Yeah, but it kept people in line. You know, you're just a no-nonsense guy, and you're that way in the classroom, and but still was able to make it fun. I had Stu, and you know, when our classes would combine for Western Civ, I mean, that was probably one of the most fond memories of my high school career were those moments, and the guillotine and all that stuff. You know, it was great. You know, and then as a board member, be able to work with you in the BEA on some negotiations and things like that. You carried that no nonsense stuff right into the meetings, and you're still the same kind of guy. You know, we can do what we need to do in the meeting, and then go out and enjoy a beverage or two afterwards, and that's the way it's supposed to be. So I just want to say I appreciate you, and thank you.
And Mark?
You know, it's kind of funny. I was thinking on today what I was going to say about Coach, and he said the word a couple of times when he was up here talking, the word blessed. And I think that each and every kid, teacher, coach, maybe not the coaches that you beat would say blessed, but kid, teacher, coach, student, what have you, would use that word when talking about Coach. And they were blessed to have known him, to know him. And I personally want to thank him. He was extremely instrumental for me when I was helping me prepare to sit in this seat. And so I want to personally thank him. And this recognition was very well deserved. I was blessed to have been there Saturday evening at the Hall of Fame dinner, and it was truly an honor to be there to honor him. And by the way, we had 80 people strong there to honor both Mark and Coach Caldwell. So very well done.
Steve?
Yeah, I just wanted to tell Mark thank you also, and I appreciated what John had to say, because I think people often don't remember Mark was a two-time Teacher of the Year for us in School District of Beloit, and it talks more about the academic end and the importance that had in his life and in the life of the kids. I remember coming to Beloit some 24 years ago, actually, as a young buck assistant principal over at McNeil, good name, and I had been a head football coach, and I came in, and my first football conversation with Mark made me understand why I wasn't a very good head football coach, because he was so much better at the football part of it than I ever imagined being. So appreciate Mark. He had been a Big 8 Conference Coach of the Year also during the time he was football. I think maybe last we've had. So just really appreciate everything he's ever done.
And I too want to say thank you and congratulations. And I think we have some outstanding educators and coaches in this district, and there are a select few who have a passion and a heart for what they do that surmounts everything, and you embody that. And we heard the guillotine, and what some of the stories that I hold close to heart are, you brought the orchestra in to play at wrestling meets. You thought outside the box. You said, how do we get students, how do we get parents, how do we get community behind our education and behind our sports, and you did it all. We struggle in some of those areas right now, let's be honest. And we do have a committee that's addressing that. So, and I know you're very busy being retired. But I would like to send out a personal invitation if you would like to join us on our athletic advisory committee. We meet the first Wednesday of every month in this room at 5 o'clock. And I think we need some of those outside the box thinkers. I think we need the energy and the passion and someone who wears it on their sleeve like you do. Because you cared and you do care about the students. You care about the staff. You care about the districts. You get the whole picture, as so many of our educators and our staff do here in the district, but you wear it on the outside as well. So thank you, congratulations, and I certainly hope to see lots more of you.
Our next recognition, our last recognition, is actually our youngest person being recognized tonight. So I'd like to ask Michaela Larson, who is a McNeil Middle School student, to come to the podium, as well as her assistant principal, Jen Papke. A very wonderful story to tell you about this young lady. And for those of you on Facebook, I had posted it there as well. And actually, it had received, just today, 43 comments and 306 likes. So that's the most we've ever gotten on a post. So this is, what happened was Michaela was walking to school one cold morning when she encountered a gentleman who had fallen and hit his head badly. Not one to leave behind someone in need of help, she called 911 and stayed to keep the man awake until the ambulance arrived. A school secretary called the emergency room on behalf of the 7th grader to find out how the man was faring. And while the ER could not give out the name, they assured the school that the man was doing much better. Such quick thinking, willingness to serve others in their time of need, and caring spirit truly embody the intent of our mission statement to help develop students into knowledgeable and admirable citizens. And I can't think of a more admirable citizen right now than young Michaela Larson. Do you want to say a few words?
Mr. Bosco is sorry he can't be here tonight because I know he's just as proud. And when you hear Mr. Bosco speak, when you hear me speak about McNeil, we always call ourselves the home of the Lancers. This is a home for our students, but it's a home for our community as well. And we talk about honor, we talk about ownership, mindfulness, and engagement. We also talk about safety, responsibility, and respect. And these are the things that we see Michaela doing every day. Not a thought went through her mind, should I or shouldn't I? She just acted. She is one of many heroes in our schools, but she deserves this recognition tonight, and I'm just so proud of her. And I'm just going to let her speak for a minute about her experience. To me, the most touching thing that came out of the conversations that we had after this is those of us in education, we always have that sort of one person who set the example for us that made us decide, yes, this is what I want to do. And this experience sort of changed Michaela's career path and realized that she wants to pursue a field where she's helping others. So I'm going to introduce Michaela Larson to you.
I just want to say that for all the people that passed him that didn't have no heart at all, that just made me sad that I was the only one and I was just so young, and all the older people than me that just passed him and didn't help him at all, and that just made me really sad. And I'm just so happy that I helped him.
So after we made the front page of the paper with a nice big picture of McNeil on there, go Lancers, we got a call from a gentleman, Mr. Braxton, who said, this is my story. And I appreciate that she was there for me, and I want to meet her, and I want to be a part of this, so I'd like to invite you to come up and join us. Thank you again.
I don't like to talk, but my name is Daryl Braxton, and last Monday morning, I was on my way to, right now I don't have a car, so I was walking to the bus station to catch the bus to go to the Beloit Mall. I had a dentist appointment, and I was walking. I just hit a piece of ice, and I was down, I was out, you know, and when I came to, I was just laying there. I couldn't move, I couldn't, you know, finally I couldn't move for like 3 minutes. And people were, you know, were riding by and just kept going. One guy just, you know, he walked past me and just kept going, and then she walked up and she asked me, did I need some help? And I said, well, yes. And so she said, okay. She called 911. They told her to stay there, you know, with me until 911 got there, which she did. And, you know, she stayed there until they came, and, you know, she made sure that, you know, she talked to me while I was still there. And, you know, so I took that ride to the hospital in the ambulance. And as I was laying in the bed, you know, in the ambulance, and one of the nurses came and she said, there's a young lady that's on the phone where she's at the principal's office, and she was the one that helped me. And I had, you know, told them that she was the one that helped me. And they said, well, she's, you know, she's kind of upset, that she's real concerned. She wants to know how you're doing. And, you know, at the time, I mean, you know, I was a little in shock, but turned out, I mean, I didn't have any broken bones or anything. I was, you know, a little sore. Still, I'm, you know, a little sore. And they said that, so she left and she came back. She said, well, the principal wants to know if you know, they can write an article about what happened. I don't care. They asked me, you know, if they could use my name. And I told them, you know, sure. And they, you know, my name, but in the paper it says that, you know, they didn't use my name because of confidentiality or whatever. But, you know, it's just that she was a courageous, you know, and brave young lady, because, you know, I feel that stuff that happens in the world today, you know, that for her to, I mean, to just stop and attempt to do what she did for somebody she doesn't know anything about, you know, it could have been somebody that was just laying there, and, you know, and once they got there, anything could happen, and she chose to put that out of her mind and did it. And, you know, you know, I gotta say, you know, I'm still a little sore, but who knows what it might have been if she would have been like the rest of them and kept going, and I'd have stayed there another 5 minutes. I might not be standing here right now, and you know, and I feel that, you know, by her, you know, that I, you know, just like the coach at the Portugal said, you know, by blessed, I feel that, you know, at that time that I was blessed. And, you know, she's just a courageous young lady, and it's an experience that, you know, I'm sure she won't, and I'll never forget, you know. And one more thing, when, you know, I called the school to see if I could, you know, if I would be able to come here and be here when she got presented. And so she called me up on the phone yesterday and said that, you know, she would like for me to come. So I told her, you know, that, yes, I'll be there, you know. You know, I wanted, you know, to make sure that it was all right with you, but yeah, I'll be there. And then, so I said, right now, I don't have a car. I said, but if I have to do the same thing I did before, walk, I'll be there. And she said, well, okay. And hung up the phone, and before I could get up, the phone rung back. And it was her. She called and she said that her stepdad or stepmom, whoever, she said, if you don't have a ride, we'll come by and pick you up. And I mean, that meant to, you know, just as much as what she did. I mean, she's a very sweet young lady, you know, so that's what I have to say. And this is Mary, this is my wife.
Well, we have something for Michaela, and I gotta tell you, it's been truly inspiring to know I've been calling you the Good Samaritan because I can't think of a more appropriate title to give you. But this is in recognition of phenomenal caring, generous giving of spirit, and serving as an inspiration to many others by helping others in need. And that's what we need.
And one more thing, I gave her a gift, and she said that she called a Good Samaritan. The gift that I gave her it's an angel. So I call her an angel. You know, that's what the gift is.
John Acom.
Daryl, don't go away. I want to just say to you, Daryl, that you and I are blessed to live in a community like this, because this community has people like Michaela in it. And Beloit is really a wonderful community with a lot of caring people, and Michaela, you exemplify it. And I just want to say that for all of us, our hats are off to you.
Thank you.
Mark.
I'd just like to, I don't know if Michaela remembers, but she used to live in my neighborhood, and I would really like her to hang out with my kids a little more so that they maybe could be more like her. But no, obviously, you know, her mom has done a tremendous job with her, and I just think it's great what you did, and I knew you had it in you.
Sure did.
Mr. Braxton and Michaela, thank you both for being here tonight and for sharing your story. And I think it's it shows exactly what we do in this district. And we hope to amplify through our students, and our students embrace that and give back to the community. And for our community members, when they're down or when they're weak, to allow others to help them. Because it's through one another and through a community and through those partnerships and foundations, as we heard with all our volunteerism over at Merrill, those foundations are critical. And without we are not as strong as we are as a whole. So thank you to both. Thank you for sharing your story, and thank you for making Beloit a better place for us all.
Thank you.
I will mention that we have copies of the paper, and thank you to Hillary for covering that for us, and we have copies for board members at the table when you're done.
Thank you, Melissa. With that, let's move to citizens or delegations. At this point, I would ask, is there anybody who wishes to speak on any area of interest that is not included on tonight's agenda? If so, I would ask that you would raise and move towards the podium, because there's a bunch of legal jargon that I'll need to read at this point if anybody is interested in doing so. I see lots of movement, but I see no movement towards the podium. So I'm going to take that as no interest to talk to anything that is not posted on tonight's agenda. And I'll move to the superintendent's report to the board, of which tonight we have 3. And the first is the WKCE cutoff scores. And I believe, Mr. Apple, you are our presenter for that. Welcome.
Thank you. Okay, wow. I'm going to have to be stepping back and from the microphone, so I'm just going to speak loud. Does the microphone pick it up then? Okay.
You're fine standing at the podium.
Okay.
They'll see it on the cameras.
That's fine. Dan, don't worry about that. Thank you, Mr. Larson. I'll just step away as I need to change. So what's happening, and this actually came about, the discussion that we're going to go through, talking about. That'd be great. Thank you, Mr. Doe. Discussion we're going to be talking about is the changing of the WKCE test score cutoffs. The state made some changes that have some pretty significant impacts to the school district and to students. So we're going to focus on the 4 key areas that we have to understand. Why were those WKCE cut scores changed? What was the impact on those individual students and some of those conversations that are going on not only here, but also in our households as well. Then the impact on the individual schools, and finally the impact on the report card. And I've got to give credit to Ms. Smullen actually on this one, because she was the first one who asked me the question when I came onto my new position in January. The first week I was there, she said, okay, I'm looking through all these report cards. What do they mean? And it was just really enlightening that we're all struggling with understanding what do these report cards mean, what do these changing cut scores mean. So we go to the next slide. There we go. The state changed the cut scores for the basic reason of they were trying to align the cut scores with more of the national average. So they used the NAEP score, which is the National Assessment Educational Progress cut scores, and they said the 50th percentile, that mid-level for the national, is what we're going to consider proficient for the state. So they also changed what are called the performance level descriptors. They said, what does it mean to be proficient? They changed what that meant as well to reflect really the college and career readiness standards that they want all of the students to be working for. The really important part to note about this is they didn't change the WKCE at all. The test itself stayed the same. So sort of thinking about this with an analogy, instead of what we have right now, or last year where we said 90% or higher, you get an A, what the state basically said is now you need to get a 98% to be considered an A. They also moved up the areas for B's and C's. They just changed that grading scale. The test itself was not changed. Now, the impact for individual students on this, what we have is the old scores and the new scores. The old scores and the new scores, and it's really kind of hard to see, so let's just talk about one student. If you want to click quick. A third grade student gets a reading score of 470 points. 470 points. And by changing the scale, what happens with that is, good. We end up seeing in the old cut scores before this year, that student would be considered advanced proficient. With the new cut scores, what happened was they basically said you did the exact same. You got the same questions right, showed the exact same knowledge, but now you're considered in the basic range for the state. That exact same student we were considering exemplary, an advanced proficient student, is now considered basic by the state. Student didn't do anything different. All they did was change the scaling. What we see on average for a student, and these are the difficult conversations we have with those students, is you did the same as you did last year. We changed the field, so now instead of talking about you excelling, we're talking about where are your deficiencies. And that gets really hard, especially as a parent. Having these conversations with my son who's in 6th grade, yeah, you didn't do any different. The playing field changed. So you get 2 proficiency level drop on average in reading. Then we go to math, which is the next slide. We have the old cut scores and the new cut scores. And let's take an example using the 7th grade student now. 7th grade student, a math score of 540. That score doesn't change. They get a 540 last year. They get a 540 this year. Same question, same test. Last year, they would have been considered in the proficient range. You are college and career ready. You are working toward your goal. This year, however, they fall into the basic range, which means they have some work to do in order to be college and career ready. Once again, the test didn't change, but it's that difficult conversation. I know teachers had a lot of these very difficult conversations during conferences. They had to talk to parents about what was going on. Your student did similar work. All of a sudden, they're being ranked differently. So that really has a dramatic impact. Now, when we talk on the school level, we'll talk Todd Elementary School, and I wanted to compare the proficiency ratings using the new WKCE and the old WKCE scores. In reading, the new scores and the old scores, we see, and if we look just at the bottom line, what those proficiency level means, with the new proficiencies, what the state is saying to us is that at Todd Elementary School, 21% of our students are proficient or advanced proficient. Just because they raised the bar, they changed that percent. Previously, with the old scores, it would have been 76% of those students. Now, no teacher is going to be happy until that's 100%. No administrator is going to be happy until that's 100%. But it's a drastically different view of how the school is succeeding when you're talking 22% versus 76%. And that is directly related to, you can see in the minimal and basic counts and the proficient and advanced proficient counts, that top half flips to the bottom half of the rankings just because of the changed cut scores. In math, it's very similar. You see a 33% proficiency versus 79% with the old cut scores. Now, it's a little bit easier to see with it graphically. So if we go to the next slide, this is graphically just comparing. Now, you want to be in the blue and the green. Blue and the green, advanced proficient. Old cut scores, 70%. The new cut scores, 30%. It's a really huge change, and you can see that big shift. And this comes to the accountability as they're talking about vouchers for Beloit. And they're talking about a lot of other big changes as a result. A lot of the reflection is how are they looking at us with the new cut scores, that raised bar. If we want to go to the next slide, that's math. We'll just skip ahead. I wanted to talk about the different levels as well, because it's also a different effect of whether or not you're in elementary school, a middle school, or a high school. But it's all very similar. It's this drastic change of what happened. McNeil Middle School, with the new cut scores last year, they were ranked at 16% proficient or advanced proficient. But with the old cut scores, they were at 74%. 3/4 of the students versus 1 out of every 7 students. That's a huge change, and it has a big impact. That's in reading. In math, it's 23% to 66%. These new cut scores change the way we look at our schools. They change how the schools are perceived, and when we're talking about what do those schools look like, and then the governor and the legislature and the Senate start talking, our schools are not succeeding. They're talking about the new cut scores, that new bar, which has a very big impact on what do we look like as a district. Now, I'm not saying this is solely Beloit. There are 420 some odd districts in the state. Every one of them is dealing with the same thing. Every single district is dealing with this changing playing field. It's how do we react to it and what does it mean? Now, if we go on, I'm going to skip the graphs for McNeil because I want to get to, that centerpiece of the community. Every community talks about what's that big centerpiece, and they always talk about the high school. What's the high school doing? Parents look at a district and they say, if I'm going to bring my child here, what's the high school doing? Now, they look at reading. They look at math. They don't look at the welding program that's going on at the high school. They don't look at all those great AP courses, even though they should be. They look at the bottom line on that state report card and what can they see from DPI. And what they see right now is 30% of our high school students last year were proficient or advanced proficient in reading. Whereas with the old cut scores that were in effect last year, it was actually 70%. There's a great change in that perception and what a big impact it can have. In math, it's 23% to 52%. There's a huge gap, so it's also in the perception of those schools. Now, the most important part here when we're talking, and I like to talk about, go ahead, I'm going to skip these graphs. I like to talk about the school report card because Governor Walker stated specifically, any district with 2 or more schools that are in the bottom 2 categories on the school report card will qualify for the voucher program. Now, I've highlighted one important sentence here. And this is directly on every report card, and it's talking about these higher cut scores. The cut scores that were just changed this year have been retroactively applied to your school to show trends. So we're not talking about what did the students do 2, 3 years ago, testing what they did, what they learned 3 and 4 years ago. We're talking about what they learned 3 and 4 years ago compared to where we want them to be right now. So it'd be like going back and saying, hey, by the way, I know you had a great high school transcript and you're ready to go off to college, but right now we're going back and we're changing those transcripts. All those A's, those are becoming C's. That scholarship that you thought you were going to get, nope, you're not getting that because we're going back in and we're changing your transcript. That's exactly what the state did there, and it wasn't to evaluate the schools. It was just so they could get that level playing field comparing progress. Now, I brought one school for an example to talk about, and that was Merrill Elementary School. And if we click, we're going to be able to see, I'm going to focus on the reading achievement, and we can see right now, they had, it's called student count and the points you earn per student. And if you're really interested in some late night reading, it's about an 85-page technical manual of how they calculated it. And Miss Smullen was wonderful enough to pass that on to me. And that's some dry reading. For someone who loves numbers like me, that was still pretty dry reading. It's very hard. It's like doing your taxes by hand again. But it calculates out using the new cut scores, how they've applied them retroactively, Merrill got 25 and a half points. 25 and a half points for those students. But with the actual scores, the actual performance of those students would have earned 49 points. These types of things would make a huge difference where the schools rank. Do they rank at meets expectations? Do they rank at exceeds expectations? Things like that could be a really big factor. In math, you see the same effect. Math, I looked at 2011, 2012. They had 14 and a half points out of those 33 students. They actually would have earned 23 points out of those students. So really what's happening is these changing cut scores are having a dramatic impact on how the students are rated, first off, because you have to have those conversations with students. And I'm not saying it's right or wrong on that point. I'm saying you have to have a different conversation with a student there, which can have some pretty big impacts. It then impacts the schools as well. There's a really big impact of what does the school look like? What's the community perception? If you look at a district and you say, I have 70%, 75%, 80% of our students college and career ready versus 30%, what does that look like for the community? And then you talk about the school report card impacts, the last one, you also see how this then impacts what does this mean for voucher programs? What does it mean for state aid? What does it mean for those improving schools? And the schools of recognition, how many more schools of recognition are we going to have? That's what we're really looking at. So I thank the board for giving me the opportunity to present this, and I will welcome any questions that may have come up.
John Winkleman?
Thank you, Peter. Just a couple quick questions, if I could. So, just a reminder, WKCE is a, all week long test that happens sometime in October, so we get a good view, or a one-day test, or can we talk about what this is?
It depends on how the schools have it set up. Most schools do testing over multiple days, a couple half days here and there. It's once a year in October, testing what the students learned the previous year.
And the scores are coming out soon?
They are currently embargoed. They are available to the public April 23rd.
Okay, so let's just think this through, right? So WKCE is testing what students do, and it's supposed to be diagnostic and helpful. And we do it in October, and they go through an entire year without any information from the test, and then we get to April, and we learn something about what they did. Is there any justification you've seen anywhere about how that is diagnostic and helpful?
I don't believe it's described as a diagnostic.
Okay.
I might actually lean on Ms. Trudeau to give a bit more detail on that.
It maybe was supposed to be, but it's not.
Okay.
By the time we get it back, students have changed immensely because we've had them for another 8 or 9 months. That's exactly why they're changing the testing, though. The new Smarter Balanced assessment will address that because we'll be able to take it multiple times and get immediate feedback from it. Or within a short amount of time, we'll be able to get feedback that will actually impact the classroom instead of waiting for a year to get results.
I have a couple more, if that's all right. So WKCE, I remember back when we all had to take our common tests, whatever that was, Iowa Basics or wherever they were. Most of us had no interest in really wanting to do that. There was always something else you'd want to do as a student. So if I'm a particular high school person and I have to take a 10th grade test, what's the motivation that says I don't just fill in the bubbles and make a nice picture because it doesn't matter? It doesn't affect graduation. The state doesn't say you have to pass this test, right? Is there any reason that students would know that it matters?
Other than administration reinforcing and teachers reinforcing that it does matter, there is no intrinsic motivation for a student now that was not there when you were a student.
Okay, so if I'm my typical high school student, you're not going to be able to convince me that it makes a difference because it doesn't affect whether I graduate or whether I pass U.S. history or any of that stuff.
Go
The answer to that is definitely no. I mean, and we see that in kids, that there isn't a whole lot of motivation to take it. But again, that's why they're switching one of the proposals for the high school is to do the ACT suite. And again, it wouldn't be the one we have it would change slightly. The Explore and Plan test would change slightly, but to more match our Common Core standards. But see a lot more motivation in kids to take a test like that because it does mean something. It tells them how prepared they are for college and how well they'll do on that ACT test. So I've seen with kids that do take those tests, we see a really big motivational factor difference as compared to the WKCE because you're right, it means nothing to them.
So I have one last question. Do either of you two know of any of the private schools around us, Rock County, that take the WKCE and we have their results?
We don't have the results.
Do you know of any private school that takes the WKC?
No.
Okay. The answer to that was no, by the way. I'm hearing that.
Yes, that'd be
Not
no.
there.
Correct.
Thank you.
Thank you, John. Anybody else? John Acom, please.
Peter, one thing that would be helpful, I think, to us as we continue to try to fully understand the implications of these changes would be to have some information in terms of rankings in state by school, so we could begin to better understand where we stand by comparison, setting aside the whole issue of whatever the numbers may be. And, the same thing with percentiles and also with students, looking at students' percentiles and so on and so forth, so that we can better understand where those percentiles are breaking down today in proficient and minimal and basic and all the rest of that. I think that kind of comparison would be helpful because then it just takes away the focus on the raw numbers and helps us to get a better understanding of how we're doing. And then finally, if we can begin to think about whether or not we can come up with an equitable way to understand and explain whether or not our achievement is level, declining, or getting better. And I think all that kind of stuff would be helpful because all of it gives us some perspective as opposed to just looking at the fact that the numbers are changed and there we are.
Yes, that's definitely something we are looking into.
Thank you, John. Renee?
Comment on that. That's a great idea, but the problem is they keep changing the playing field on us. And so as actually the true WKCE has changed several times. It just in my, administration of it, it's changed about 3 times. And so the test changes, but you're still trying to measure it as a growth measure. And then now the cut score changed. So it's still not apples to apples. And a year or year to 2 from now, the test will change again. And so it will be really nice when we have the same test for a while so we can really get some accurate measures of that, of how things change from year to year. So I appreciate that.
Excellent. Thank you both. And thanks for trying to give us some clarity in a very murky, unclear environment. But
You're welcome.
it helps a little bit. And certainly we'll certainly have more questions as we go forward. So with that, let's move forward to the school update at Merrill. Mrs. Smullen, please.
Thank you. This is actually when we recognized Mrs. Ray. She didn't know she was being recognized. It was a sneak attack. She was actually just here to support us in our presentation of the data. And so with that, I want to introduce Mrs. Burt. She's our special ed, one of our special ed teachers at Merrill, one of our lead teachers, and she'll be talking about the 3rd grade data. Miss Adama, she's a 1st grade teacher, a home and school and volunteer coordinator. She's going to be talking about 2nd grade data. Miss Schulta, 1st grade teacher and leadership team member. She'll be talking about 1st grade data. I'll be talking about kindergarten data and just a little bit of an update. And the data that we're going to be talking about is MAPS data, which is Measure of Academic Progress. It's taken in the fall, winter, and spring. So we have our most recent winter scores and looking at the trends. We're very proud of the data that we have to share, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. So Miss Burt, if you want to.
This is a graph of our 3rd grade MAP scores.
fall 2011, winter 2012, spring 2012, fall 2012, and winter of 2013. Our growth rate is the green line in the middle there, and the national norm is the reddish line on the top. We're happy to see that our growth rate is following that of the national norm very closely, and at the top you can see we're beginning to close that gap. All right. This slide shows the numbers, the growth numbers, again for those fall map windows. And you can see reading, this is reading, in fall of 2012, we actually have a decline, and that's our summer slide. And we just wanted to mention that because we are working extremely hard and very diligently to get as many of our students, if not every one of our students, into summer school to stop some of that summer slide. However, we're really excited to move over to the next column where we see that we had 9.4 points in growth, where the national norm growth rate was only 4.7 points. So we are very excited to see that. This is math map scores, again the same windows. We see our Merrill growth in the green, and again we're mirroring that of the national average. If you look at the top of the graph, we are even closer to closing that gap. And then again, this is the same graph with the maps data, and we see that summer slide again in fall of 2012 that we're working so hard to stop. But if you flip over or switch over to the next column, we see 10 growth points, where the national norm growth was only 6.4. So we were very excited to see that, and that shows that we're really closing that gap on third grade. And this is second grade.
Okay. So for reading, I'd like to point out that we are closing the achievement gap within our different areas of students, such as our African American, our special education, and our ELL students. We're all in a nice tight cluster. If you go, okay. Our summer slide, as Stephanie mentioned, was 6.5, but we made growth of 10.9 points per student on average, and the national norm was 7.7, so we are making nice growth. For math, again, you see us closing the achievement gap. We started in fall with the 6 points, or at 6 points below the national average, and by winter, we were only 2.5. We made a growth of 12.4 points per student on average. And again, this shows, can you hear me? This shows the 12.4. Go ahead, no, next slide. In the column winter 2013, you see that 12.4 points per average student.
And that was Ms. Burt, followed by Ms. Adama. This is Ms. Schulte.
Good evening. I just want to start off by thanking the board members for everything you're doing for Merrill right now. We really appreciate it, so thank you for that. First grade, very pivotal year. We're looking at the first slide. You'll see the achievement gap is really close there. We're really working very, very hard. We're looking at the next slide. Let me see here. This is our reading data, and you'll notice the national norm is 10.4. We're right with it at a 10.5. So we're right there. Our math data, if you're looking there, very close again with the achievement gap. We're keeping right up on all our Black, Hispanic, white, free and reduced. Everything is very close together, which is great to see. And if we look at our next slide, flip the page here. Our Merrill average growth is 12.4, and our national norm is 9.6. So we're doing really well, and we're very proud. So once again, thank you for all that you're doing for us.
Yep. Next one. All right, and I get the privilege to talk about kindergarten here. And kindergarten in our reading, you can see that that big red line is the national average, and we were just 2.4 points away from it as a school average. We have one group that was a little bit above, but our growth, this is where I get really excited. We were only supposed to grow 8.5 points, and we grew 11 points in reading, and so that was a huge jump. In math, if you go to the next slide, our school average surpassed the national average for the cut score. So, not looking at growth, just looking at straight out, did we make it? And we did. And the growth for that was only supposed to be 7 points. The national average, we made 15.5 points of growth. So that was double what we should have done. So that was pretty exciting. Some of what... Oh, we're on the last one. I kind of went through it pretty quick. And then one last slide. And I just wanted to close out by talking a little bit about some of the other changes we've coming together as Merrill and Wright. We took time to come up with our mission statement, really looking at 21st century skills, talking about where we want our students to be. We've brought in a lot of iPads and laptops, but it's more than that. It's really about getting everyone together to keep those high expectations in mind and working together as PLCs, professional learning communities. I couldn't be prouder of my staff, honestly. The WKCE data is embargoed, like Pete said, but I can tell you that looking at what I'm seeing right now, that we're, as you can see from this data right here, that it's going to be really exciting for come April 23rd. I'd love to come back and just say hi to everybody because we're excited to see what it'll show. A few more positives in PBIS. Merrill has made it to the tier 2 level, so we're doing a lot of great work around that. I wanted to show briefly, part of our mission statement talks really about technology and those 21st century skills. And Sarah Chapman, our integration technology teacher, developed this Merrill Tigers Weebly. It's a website. Just wanted to show it to you briefly. There's Mr. McNeil and others. So I don't know if you want to show just a little bit, Kathy? Sure. But the students can go in, and she just organized it really nicely with a lot of our pictures of all the great things that we're doing. In addition, just play around. Yep, wherever. And but going into Odyssey and First in Math or some math examples, then our third graders on the Smarter Balanced Assessment will be asked to type an essay, and so we're trying to get them ready to do things like that. So.
Different things. We do a lot of this on our after-school program, the technology piece, getting them to be able to use the computers.
They can't hear you.
Oh, that's okay. I was just saying that we use the Weebly a lot during our after-school program. One of the things that we do with our first graders is getting them technologically savvy, so they learn how to use the computer as a tool, not just as a toy. And this has been a really helpful, great site for us. That's all the basics. So, nice job there.
Mm-hmm. And that's it. That's part of all that we're doing at Merrill.
Thank you, Mrs. Mullen. John Winkleman, please.
Okay, just a couple of quick questions. First of all,
Oh, thanks. Mrs. Ray.
you're right. She's good.
She is good. I know.
So I'm going to ask a simple question. What's a Weebly?
A Weebly is a website. It's a free website that she just put together, and it's connected to our Merrill homepage. So if you go on our Merrill homepage, you can see our mission statement and then click on Merrill Tiger Tech. It's just a good way to organize everything that we're doing, just to give you a snapshot.
I see. So perhaps, board, we should have a Weebly because we might need some of that. So,
Yeah.
Okay, got it. Because we're doing this computer thing scarily. So I will get to a more important question. So I'm watching your graphs, and I'm watching they get closer and closer. And that's I'm taking away the right message here that we're shrinking the gap, right? That you said that multiple times, and that's one of my takeaways. That's what it should be.
When you see all the different color lines represent our ELL students, or African American students, or white students, everybody, and it's closing. So that's what's exciting. And one thing I didn't talk about, Merrill was identified as a focus school because of 3 years worth of data coming back to 2008-9, and then the first year we were there, that test in October. And so we're in order to shed that status, we have to make 2 years of gains. And right now it looks like we've got our first year pretty well licked, and we'll go on to the second year and be done with it.
Awesome. There's one line at the bottom, and I had to look it up. I think it's special education, right?
Yes.
It tends to kind of still trends in the right direction, just lags the school pool a little bit.
Yes.
Can you help us with a number, roughly how many kids does that represent at Merrill Ballpark?
We have about 260 kids, and we have we're about 14%. So how many do we have? We have about 30 children who are in special education classes.
Okay, so I'm going to put my other hat on right now and say,
Mhm.
okay, so we have some really great private schools in the area, and they do good work, right? But they won't have that line.
They will not. No, they do not have
Because
to accept
they
special
don't have
education students, and they
Special ed, they won't have the 30, won't be represented in that
Nope.
picture, and they won't have the test scores unless they happen to do maps and track them to see where they go. So, great, thanks.
Yep. Thank you. Good points.
Thank you, John. John Aiken, please.
You know, as I hear about this progress at Merrill, and it's fantastic. Obviously, a lot of it can be attributed to great teachers. We've heard from some tonight. But, you know, the other thing that I'm hearing in your comments and the comments from the teachers and so on is an absolutely unshakable belief that each and every one of our kids can succeed, and that there's no reason why anybody can't succeed. And that's driving everything you're doing. And it's phenomenal. And I just wanted to say thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
And I too want to say thank you. Thank you for sharing with us tonight. Thank you for telling us where we're going, and for having belief, as John said, in all of our students, and having a belief that we're not there yet. As I heard you say, this is where we're going, but we're going to continue to meet and escalate over those national trends. And I want to say, Ms. Wright, thank you for putting us in our place tonight when we need to clap, and you're welcome here any night to keep us on track, because sometimes we need somebody like you to just let us know what we're missing. So please feel welcome to help us out anytime, as well as anybody here tonight. So thank you for joining us, and congratulations to Merrill.
Thank you.
All right, next we have up Mr. Jacobson with a construction update, please.
I'll try not to pick on anybody tonight. No hard hats or anything like that. But I would like to talk about some of the great progress that we're seeing out there from our local contractors. You know, I was at Converse today, and one thing that makes the longer days all worthwhile is seeing the teachers out at Converse as they come into that new area and just absolutely break down into tears. I know our music teacher out there was just beside herself today, and it's incredible. So it makes it all worthwhile. So Katie's group, they'll see that as well. So. Okay, so again, just wanted to highlight our projects. We've got Klobuchar Construction doing Converse, Gilbank doing Merrill, Corporate Contractors is doing Robinson, and then also Corporate Contractors is doing our pool project at the high school. At Robinson, if you would go on to the next one, you can see some of the progress that we're making there, and these pictures were taken mid-March, and even just in the 2 weeks from this, all the drywall's up, It's painted. They're putting ceiling grid in. They're putting lights in already. They're prepping the floors for floor tile. So we're getting very close in these areas. And that particular project is slated to be handed over to us May 1st. So we're going to be ahead of schedule there. Moving on to the next slide, Robinson, same thing. We've got. Well, let me back up. Converse. I'm sorry. So Converse, again, we're going to actually be occupying the north wing at Converse right after spring break. So we've got some work to do this coming weekend, going in and scrubbing and waxing floors and getting the tile all ready. So the kids are going to be utilizing the music room. They're going to be into the art room, several of the classrooms along the north wing, and then utilizing the new gymnasium, which is twice the size of what they are currently in. And with the new gymnasium, what the nice thing is, they will be able to have lunch in one side of that gym. We can put a curtain down now, and the other side, they will still be able to have gym class. So it's going to open up their schedules a lot for them. And you can see some of the beautiful colors that are we're putting in out there. At Merrill, the next slide. I know that this particular project got a slower start because of the size of the area and restrictions that they have because our fences are just too close to the building there. So, but they started doing their parking lot first and then started their building. And these guys have made some great progress in the last month or two. Everything is up, all the outside brick is on, all the windows are in. They're putting up drywall and getting everything ready to go there as well. Down at our pool, we have had some weather this winter that has not been friendly to us. It's definitely not like last winter. But we are still making progress, be it slow, but it's still there. And now we've got the actual floor of the pool is poured, and we should start to see walls going up around that pool in approximately 3 weeks. So you're going to see a lot happening in the next 3 weeks to a month. The next slide is going to show you what we're going to be doing on the south end of the high school with the tennis courts. They are going to be relocated down to the south end, at the end that has the auditorium. And we will still maintain where there's just a softball diamond now that the juniors used. We're going to be utilizing that. We're going to redo that and have a soccer field there. So we're going to be utilizing all that space. But again, 8 courts. We will have seating at those courts, and then in the front you can see in this area we're going to have, it's a kind of a picnic area and an area that our students and the public will be able to use to just kind of relax and enjoy the day, if you will. Moving on. Our Phase 2 and Phase 3 projects are starting this next month. We are going to be taking down some houses that are next to Gaston, and we also have several houses along 8th Street that we're going to be taking down for renovations for Hackett Elementary, and then we'll also be starting renovations at Todd. And then approximately a month or two after that, we will start yet another phase for our intermediate schools, Cunningham, and then the new school that is yet to be named. And then we're also going to be filling in the old pool and creating a fitness center with the stuff that we currently have in the high school, that now we're going to create a space to actually put everything in one area and make it a true fitness center. So it's really going to benefit the kids and the staff and the public. So quickly again on the fitness center, I just want to say that we're not buying all new equipment. We are utilizing what we have, bringing it into the same area, and creating a nice area for the students and staff. Moving on to Cunningham. Cunningham is going to take, it's going to triple in size. And again, we are keeping the theme of separating the age groups as they come into the buildings. So a lot of what you see here is really driving that. So, but you can see it's again quite a dramatic change. We're adding about 77,000 square feet onto that facility. At Gaston, Gilbank Construction is going to be finishing up at Merrill and moving right over to Gaston to start that project. So it again is very close in design to what we're finishing up at Merrill. So it just makes sense, and they have been a good partner with us to move them right over there. At Hackett, CCI is going to be moving into that project. Again, we're looking at a lot of stuff that will be going on even over spring break. We're going to start that project, actually fencing in where you see where the new gymnasium is going to go down at the end. We're going to actually be starting on that side, and then also taking care of and leveling the houses along 8th Street so we can create a lay-down area for our construction materials. At Todd, you can see that is really going to take, and it's going to change a lot of things over there. And one of the things that we wanted to accomplish along Colley Road and Oakwood Avenue is we wanted to change and really help out with the traffic issues there. And as far as the parking goes, right now everybody knows that goes to Todd, there's really no parking there. So we wanted to fix some of those issues and make sure that we're taking care of where our staff and where our the visitors to Todd, so they can actually park instead of on the street. They've got a place to actually park inside. Our intermediate school is still out there. Believe me, it is still there. It is very, very close to being, we're looking at probably May before we can get something officially out to everybody, May, June. We'll just have to see where everything goes with that. Our next slide is how we're going to lay out Aldridge Middle School so we can move forward and get this set up for our intermediate schools. Same thing with McNeil. And some of the projects, again, that we've completed at a couple of these schools have been pretty extensive. Building envelope, lighting, and we continue to, we've got some roofing and other projects that we've got planned this coming summer as well. Our high school technology area is one that is really taking a whole new shape, and I think is going to really take us in a whole new direction. So those that have gone through that program, I'd invite you to come back and take a look at that here in the next couple of months, because you will not know it back, and we're really looking at changing how our kids are going through our technical education. Our what we want to talk about just briefly again, we know that when we started our referendum process, we talked to the public about how much this was going to cost everybody, and we started out with a figure of $67.50 a year based on a $75,000 home. With our great fiscal responsibility, our excellent bond rating from Moody's, what we now know is that our new tax rate for the citizens is going to be $55.50 a year. So we are saving money for everybody now. So good things for us. And future of some of our buildings. At Burge, we're going to be vacating that the fall of 2014. We are going to look at selling that facility. Our Gateway property, same thing. We're going to be looking at selling that property as well. McGlenigan, we're going to, that is also, we're going to close that 2014 after or I should say the summer of 2014. Morgan, same thing. We're going to be vacating that in the fall of 2014. Colac Education Center, we are looking at trying to get out of this place within the next 6 months to a year, if not sooner. Our Liberty Pharmacy right now is being rented, and we continue to consider offers for purchase. And then Royce is going to be closing this coming June. Again, just a summary. Converse, Merrill, Robinson schools will have classrooms ready for K-4 students this fall. Other buildings, we're going to be starting construction this spring, April through June. 6th grade will have the elementary setting. 7th grade will be a transition year with having more students introduced into a daily schedule. 8th grade will be a typical middle school year of scheduling. And again, naming the new school is going to be determined by board committee. Any questions?
John Winkleman?
I'll be quick. Just, Jeff, so you talked about, so we're in the middle of finishing our first 3, right?
Yes.
And we're moving into our next 3.
Correct.
Just to remind us all, the contractors that we're using for all 6 are who?
For all 6 are Klobuchar Construction, CCI Construction,
Okay.
and Gilbank Construction.
Okay. So all 6 have been done or being done local folks?
That is correct.
Okay, cool, thanks.
Yep.
Anybody else? Seeing none, thank you so much for giving us that update. It's always exciting to see what we're able to accomplish from month to month, and it's
Oh, yes.
tremendous, so thank you.
You're welcome.
Let's move then to reports to the reports to the board. First up, we have student board member report.
No student board member.
She was with us earlier tonight in our special meeting. She wished us well, and she's with us here in spirit. So moving right along, let's move then to committee reports. First up, John Winkleman with Finance, Transportation, and Property Committee, please.
We met and reviewed POs between $15,000 and $25,000, and it was a landmark meeting because the first time that I know of, we have not had any POs between $15,000 and $25,000 to review. So no money spent, which is good in that area anyhow. We looked over a continuation of 2012 and 13 budget amendments. A lot of that has to do with when grant monies come in or other things like that come in. The budget is amended to reflect those things. And we talked about how we want to, on a monthly basis now, right, look at those amendments that way we see them more frequently when they're happening, and that being a good thing. We talked about, Mr. Jacobson gave us a presentation on indoor environmental quality management plan, and we appreciated his view and the plan on how to continue looking at the indoor environmental quality. And we've had lots of discussions about what that means and what products to be using, from cleaning supplies to how classrooms are decorated, HVAC systems, all sorts of things like that. And we most recently had a discussion about carpet versus tile in classrooms and what that might mean. So we appreciated that being brought forward to us. We had a co-op agreement for girls soccer to renew, and then we also, for Furry Girls Hockey co-op agreement, added a partner from Milton, and so that was a good thing. We also sent out a bunch of RFPs, requests for proposal for actuarial services, sent out 11, only received 2 back in, and I think the one being presented for suggestion to use this next year is the same that we used last time, right? Yeah, okay. Then we also looked at Adobe Software District-wide license, and what that might mean for us. A district-wide license would allow us to have the Adobe software on every piece of equipment that the district owns, instead of buying individual licenses for each computer. And we talked about some of the pros and cons of that, and we're going to try out the district-wide license and see how that works out for us. Questions?
Any questions? Seeing none, thank you, Michael. Let's move forward to curriculum and instruction with John Aiken, please.
Okay, the Curriculum and Instruction Committee met on March 12th, and we looked at a monthly report on fund development, and these are grants that are in the pipeline, somewhere in the pipeline, and we are stepping up our activity to generate more grants, which means obviously more revenue for the school district. So again, we're trying to be outside of the box. We're looking for a variety of approaches, all to make the school district better. We also had a couple of new grant opportunities presented to us, which will come to the board for approval later this evening. And then Peter Apple, whom you saw here earlier, presented information to us on map testing data, some of which you just saw again tonight, and essentially looking at our students and how they're progressing and how they measure up against national norms. And we continue to improve, and MAPS testing, unlike WKCE, is something that's the same from year to year, so it's a much better tool for allowing us to understand progress that's being made, and it's very encouraging. Then we had a visit from the school social workers, and that was followed by the school psychologists, and they both came as a group and to update us on what they're doing. One of the social workers, who's been with the district for more than 30 years, was utterly delighted. She explained that the board had never asked before what it was that they were doing, and so she was very pleased that indeed they were there to have an opportunity to tell us all the things that they're doing, and they do it a tremendous amount. They really do. Social workers, for example, get involved in behavior interventions where we have kids who are getting out of line, and one of the first steps is to bring them back in line. They also work with families, so they're one of our arms that is both inside and outside of the school. They go into homes, and this is something that's often proven very helpful in keeping our kids on track, because again, one of our objectives always is to keep all of our kids in school and keep them all performing. They initiate and participate in initial evaluations for special education. They serve as a liaison with ancillary agencies, which can be the justice end of it, courts and probation officers and so on, or a lot of other social service agencies for that matter. And again, they are the principal contact there. one of the things that I think is most important that they do is they're involved in suicide assessment and risk assessment and reporting and dealing with it. And teen suicide rates in Rock County are a little higher than a lot of other places, and we don't want to be a part of that. And so we pay an awful lot of attention to that. Some of the things our psychologists do is, first of all, they get involved in some of the things. There is some cross-fertilization between social workers, psychologists, and counselors. And that's good because, again, they work in partnership. They hand off the ball to different qualified professionals. It works well. And the psychologists, again, work with teachers to help teachers, for example, with strategies to increase motivation for learning. They also work with students and families to evaluate eligibility for special education services and to design specific interventions to deal with specific behavior kinds of problems. And they also do work with administrators to put together a comprehensive school mental health program. And again, this is something that we cannot neglect because mental health is a real issue for, a number of our kids. And so again, we have our psychologists that we can depend on for this. So anyway, they do all this and more. They work create special opportunities for kids who need it to get together to deal with things like anger management, for example. And they work with teachers and administrators to create climates that are conducive to learning. So there's a lot of things that our social workers do. One of our social workers has an office that we still haven't seen a picture of, and it looks like sort of a secondhand clothing store. But what she does, she keeps things in there for kids who all of a sudden are coming to school without coats, for example. She's got coats. She's got hats. She's got sweaters. She's got all sorts of things that are there for free for kids who need them, so that, again, our kids are comfortable, because comfortable kids are going to be kids that learn. And all this is in support of our kids learning, and that's what those guys do. So I found it fascinating, and I enjoyed their report. And perhaps one of these years, we'll bring them before the full board on television and let them share with the world all that they do. And that concludes my report.
Any questions for John? Seeing none, let's roll right into policy and personnel with Nora, please.
Hi. We met on February 26th before our last business meeting to approve the personnel recommendations. Most of those recommendations happen to be on retirements this time of year. And we also met again this evening, and we'll have some on our agenda this evening who are retiring, and we will offer that up too for approval. But we met on March 12th. That's where we do most of our work for our committee. And we're making quite a huge dent in the policies of updating them, doing minor revisions. And on March 12th, we did a minor revision on a facility policy, which was just changing a legal cross-reference. And then first policies for first reading, most of them were in the 700 series, which happened to be for support services, and we'll be approving some of those this evening. Policies for second reading were in the 600 series, which has to do with fiscal management. And then we had a couple of policies that were recommended for deletion, and those were in the area of administration. By the way, many of these policies that we are updating this evening and will be approving happen to be they were last updated many of them were last updated in 1994. So you can see our committee's been very diligent in updating and bringing into the current practices what the school district does do. Additionally, Mr. Kabelka's been working diligently on our handbook and has been meeting with both the teachers union and other employee groups to get a little bit of feedback, and very shortly that will be rolled out to all of us to take a peek at, and there will be some conversations on that. I think that is about all that we did, a lot of policies. I think all in all, this last meeting, we had maybe 30 policies we looked at. So thank you.
Thank you, Nora. Any questions for Nora? Seeing none, let's move then forward to the consent list, please.
Move approval.
Second.
Discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
And those opposed? Motion carries. Next up, we have 2012-2013 budget amendments.
Move approval.
Second.
Discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next, we have renewed girls soccer co-op agreement.
Move approval of the co-op agreement renewal.
Discussion?
I have a question too, but go ahead.
First question I have is, we don't have the agreement to look at. Okay, so Chuck's making copies. The other question that I have is, we're renewing for 2 years. And the question that I have on that is, not knowing what the budget holds, anytime we go into a co-op, it requires that we have a no-cut situation. Therefore, if you look at our co-op teams, oftentimes we have multiple teams. And I think with girls soccer, we have at least 3, which increases the cost, obviously, because we have additional coaches, additional costs. And I'm going to have the same question when we look at girls hockey, simply because it's locking us into 2 years in a no-cut situation. And I know that athletics, while keeping personal bias on the sidelines, is one of those areas that we're talking about and how we're going to look at our budgets and potential cuts. So the question I have is, are we ready to commit to 2 years in a co-op agreement where we're locked into funding? And in particular, with the hockey, where there's numbers associated, and I'm not certain with the soccer, which is en route to us now, if we have numbers with that as well. So with that, John Winkleman.
I was going to ask the same question. Maybe we can we hold these in abeyance, these next 2, until the agreement comes back, and just keep moving through our agenda, and then if the board is so inclined?
I would be in favor of that. Would the maker of the motion and the seconder be amenable to hold it in abeyance till we can have the actual agreement to look at?
Yes. Yep.
Outstanding. Then let's move forward to agenda item E, actuarial services contract award, please.
Move approval.
Second.
Discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
And those opposed? Motion carries. Next, new fund development opportunities.
Move approval.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor? And those opposed? Motion carries. Next up, agenda item G, Series 700 Support Service Policies for first reading.
Move approval.
And again, this is Policy 720, Safety Program, 721, Facilities Inspection, 722.1, Accident Report, 723, Emergency Plans, and 723, Rule 1, Emergency and Disaster Communications Network, 731, Buildings and Ground Security, and 731, Rule 1, Building and Ground Security Guidelines, 731.1, Rule 1, Procedures for Reporting Loss Damage Incidents, 732, Buildings and Grounds Maintenance, and 732, Rule 1, Maintenance Guidelines, 733, which is Energy Management, 733, Rule 2, Vending and Appliance Use Policy, and finally 734, Integrated Pest Management. It has been moved and seconded. All those who wish to engage in discussion, John Winkleman.
A question on 2 of them. So I realize it's first reading, so as the committee goes back to take a look at it, 720 safety program, I'm confused as to why we would have competent professional staff person designated by the superintendent to serve as safety coordinators, plural. My understanding is we have a safety coordinator right now, and I wasn't anticipating we were going to add any FTEs or make any changes. So a question for the group as it goes back. I don't know that it makes sense that you'd have 2 in your policy. It implies you're going to have more than 1, and so the question is, what is that one? The other one that I have is under Emergency Plan 723. Most of what we are being asked to do, at least most of the FEMA information, says we need to follow an incident command system, and so we interact with police, fire, and the rest of the emergency resources. I think it makes sense that our policy also reflect that, so people know that that is the appropriate, that's the plan, that's the model that we intend to use as we respond to emergencies. Otherwise, it can get floated all over the place, and I think it's important that the board sets that as the intended model. So most of the language is good, but I think it's worth mentioning as you get into that, because that is what police, fire, and everybody else uses. We should be on the same page.
Any other questions or discussion? John, if I could interject on 720, I believe that the intent of changing it to program safety coordinators is that a large discussion stemmed out of the safety committee meeting this past month, in that there needs to be a building coordinator, which is hopefully going to be the principal of each facility, that will be that point person that will, if an accident were to happen or any type of a near miss, that would be who those reports funnel through. So it wouldn't be an additional FTE or an additional addendum. It would just be an additional hat or point of contact, of which the information would flow then through to the safety director, or I'm not certain if we're changing the title or if we're still using safety coordinator for the district personnel. But there will still only be the one safety person. I believe that's the intent, but certainly since it is first reading, we can get clarity on that.
Okay, that helps me, but it makes this even more confusing, because the safety program is normally coordinated by a safety director, coordinator, whoever, whatever you want. And if there are people who will then report to that person, that makes sense, but let's outline it that way. This makes it sound like we don't have that person. So I think it makes sense to kind of take a relook at that.
I think you got some
somebody
great points.
My point is we need somebody in the lead on this topic, and if others are going to feed into that, awesome. But we still need someone in the lead. It can't lead by committee on the safety question.
Very good. I think those are great questions. So again, it's for first reading. I see Janelle shaking her head, and I think she was part of those conversations as well. So I would anticipate that we'll see some different language there before it comes back for second reading. Any other discussion? Again, these are for first reading. They've been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
And those opposed? Motion does carry. We are at agenda item H, Series 600 Fiscal Management Policies for second reading.
Move approval of all of the 600 fiscal management policies revisions.
It's been moved and seconded, and this is 672.4 Vendor Relations and 672.4 Rule 1 Vendor Relation Guidelines, 672.6 Purchasing Custodial Supplies, 673 Payment Procedures, 682 Financial Reports, and finally 684 Audits. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
And those opposed? Motion carries. Next up, agenda item I, Policies for first reading for deletion.
Move approval. There's just the one for first reading, right?
Oh, right, got it.
443.10 academic dishonesty.
Very much true. Any discussion?
Yes.
John Winkleman, please.
Lest we think we are not concerned about academic dishonesty, this policy in its basic entirety is becoming or is part of the discipline code, correct? So we know where it's going. Hello, students, if you're listening, it doesn't go away. It is still there, and you can still be held accountable for that.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And those opposed? Motion carries. Next, agenda item J, Policies for second reading for deletion.
Move approval of policies for second reading for deletion. 223 administrative professional development opportunities. 226 performance award system for administrators. 226 Rule 1 administrator qualification guidelines for performance awards. 226 Rule 2 performance award system for administrators compensation plan.
I'll second.
Any discussion? John Aiken, please.
Yeah, I've reviewed these, and in terms of policy 226, performance award system for administrators, I understand that we are deleting it because we aren't giving financial performance awards to administrators, because right now we don't have money, and that's a perfectly legitimate excuse. But On the other hand, I'm not personally comfortable with the idea of closing the door for doing this at some point in the future. So I would like to suggest perhaps that we could add a statement, for example, saying performance awards may not be implemented in years when financial constraints make such awards impractical. And put that in there and then leave this particular policy standing so that a vehicle exists in future years so that performance awards for administrators can be reinstituted.
Nora and then Michael, please.
We did have quite a discussion about this, and it will be in our new upcoming handbook, language like this. That's what we were discussing. But there were a few of us that held the same viewpoint that you have, and that's what we were told because they're putting this whole handbook together. We still have the language for this policy if we want to bring it back, but because of the handbook just being updated, that information should be in the handbook.
I have Michael and then back to you, John.
Yeah, really what we talked about, we didn't really talk about it being any language like this being in the handbook, but we talked about if we did want to provide performance awards like this again in the future, the ideas that are being talked about how that looks like is kind of different than how we have the policies written. So leaving them in when you know that if you bring it back, it's going to look different anyway, just didn't necessarily make sense to us. But we also talked about, we're removing them from the policy manual, but they are not gone forever, never to be seen again. There is access to the language if we either want to take from what we have to build something new, or if we build something differently, to reference it.
John Winkleman, then John Acom.
I have some of the same thoughts, I think, as John Acom, but I'm quite fine with deleting them now. I believe they can come back when necessary. We have always struggled to find an appropriate mechanism to be able to do that. And I think rewarding our administrators is important to us. It's an important part of the management process of what we do. So I don't think anybody disagrees with that question. And I think, you want to recognize, in some ways, appropriate ways, the best and the brightest, and also encourage those that are working at it. So it's a little of both that needs to happen. And I think there are some models that can still work with that. The reason I'm okay with saying let's put this aside right now, A, we don't have any money to do it. B, we could have a longer discussion about how to do it, because I was reminded of that as we looked at our previous meeting, an expulsion visit that we got to all see on TV, right? And we were reminded that if that's the guiding principle of what we have to, what our inputs are, right? We're not dealing with widgets, we're dealing with people and their parents and all of the messy stuff that comes with that. And so it's not the same as a widget factory in terms of performance awards. And I think we could talk about it, but I think we need to recognize that it's not the same question. And I think we can do that. I think there are people that are interested in that conversation.
Before I move to John Acom, could we extend the time of the board meeting, please?
Oh, yeah, so move.
So
we're done with our business.
Second.
Thank you, John. It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
And those opposed? Motion carries. John Acom, please.
Yeah, I understand that some of this may in fact appear in the handbook, but the handbook doesn't exist yet. So while with some of these other ones, once we could look at the code of conduct and then weigh the code of conduct against what was being deleted, we could see where the deletions made sense. And so we were okay with that. Now, I do understand that some of the stuff in here is archaic. For example, 226 Rule 1, which lists all the specific things that are going to be evaluated and so on. And in the actual compensation plan in 226 Rule 2, I'm very comfortable with deleting those because I believe that when it comes back, that it will be based upon performance criteria that make sense to the superintendent and to the board, mostly to the superintendent, at that time. And obviously, there are a variety of different priorities in the school district as we evolve as a school district and as we put concerns to bed forever and other new concerns arise, as is inevitable in any system. And for that matter, 223, same thing. 223 is one of those nice sounding things that really doesn't say anything, so I'm perfectly willing to see it go away as well. But for this, I'd like it in there as perhaps as a placeholder, perhaps as simply saying that we have a policy that we can do these things. So if at some point we decide to do them, then we can do them, and we can do them in a way that makes sense to us at the time. So that's why, and again, if we want to just keep Section 1 without Section 2 and add to Section 1, performance awards may not be implemented in years when financial constraints make such awards impractical, and delete Section 2, I'd be very comfortable with that. As a matter of fact, I'd be so comfortable with it that I will move an amendment to this to change 226 from deletion to retention of Section 1 with the additional sentence, performance awards may not be implemented in years when financial constraints make such awards impractical, and keep it there as a placeholder for us.
Are you asking that as a friendly amendment or as an amendment, or are you making the
Well,
amendment?
I would certainly hope it would be friendly, but it's an amendment however we can get it done.
I would move to amend if that would be my suggestion.
I have moved to amend.
So it's been moved and seconded. Discussion on the proposal to the amendment. The discussion on the amendment specific. We'll need to vote on the amendment prior to voting on the originally moved motion.
Yes.
John Winkleman, please.
On the amendment, I appreciate John's amendment. I think that it would have value having a discussion at some point as a whole board about it at a time other than sitting here, where we can actually listen to what others are doing and think about whether we want to keep that in there or not. So I would add to John's thoughts and table that until we can schedule a time to talk about it and go from there. I don't know that I'm opposed to it. I just would like to have more conversation about it than just what we're doing right now.
So you're moving to table the motion, John's motion for the
226
amendment.
and John's motion along with that. Table overrides everything.
Is there a second to that?
I'll second it.
So voting on the tabling of the amendment of 226 and only 226.
No, right?
226 and only 226. That's what I'm saying.
Okay.
So we're moving to table the amendment, which will isolate policy 226 and only 226.
And my motion is to table 226 as part of that's what I said.
Absolutely. So it's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion on that? Seeing none, all of those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And those opposed? The motion to table 226 has passed. Moving back to the original motion of deletion then, which will include
Just
223, 226 Rule 1, and 226 Rule 2 is where we're at. Any further discussion on that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
And those opposed? Motion carries. Moving forward to deletion of board policies in the 400 series.
Move approval.
Discussion?
And that would be 410 student policy goals, 412.1 Rule 1 membership audit guidelines, 435 Rule 1 procedures for student transfers, withdrawals, 455.4 student safety patrols, and 455.4 Rule 1 guidelines for elementary safety patrols, 456 DC student assistant programs, and 456 Rule 1 DC general guidelines for student assistant programs, and 443.7 DC youth gangs, and
No.
443.7 Rule 1 DC disciplinary actions for specific gang-related activities, and 452 student aid programs.
400 series.
Yep. Oh, no, just, yep, my prep, stop at E, 456
Thank you.
DC, yep.
So
Not out of
5A
six.
through E.
Yep.
It's been moved and seconded. Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
And those opposed?
We got going.
Motion carries. Now you can roll with your 443 if you'd like to move it.
I'll move item 6 and item 7 as policies for deletion, with again the notation that while it may appear that gang issues are being removed from this policy, they are definitely part of the student handbook and of great concern for the board.
Thank you, John. I would ask that you would consider what we have in front of us, though, as the revised, which is actually deleting 443.7 and 443. But the revised suggests that we keep now 443.7 as amended in what was in front of us this evening, while still deleting 443.7 Rule 1.
Yep, this is on paper.
This is on. Yeah, this is on paper, not on the PC, and it was in here at our desk when we walked in.
Gotcha.
Trying to figure it out.
Gotcha. Holy smokes.
Correct. And if you go forward into policy 443.7, some of the discussion in the policy and personnel was that boxed in area. Can we have clarity that how would gang activity be considered in the code of conduct? Because it didn't include all of the same language as the policy.
Please consider my motion withdrawn.
All right. Would you like to make a new motion?
I'm not sure what I'd make it yet, so help me out.
I'm looking over to John Aiken. Perhaps he has one for us.
No, actually, I'm going to ask for a ruling from the chair. Given that this is in front of us for the first time this evening, would this be interpreted as a first reading rather than a second reading?
No, it's no different than after first reading, as John had made suggestions to some of the policies tonight. We said it will probably look different when it comes before us for second reading. Well, it changed very recently for board members. And I think if it would be in the best interest of the board to take some time to digest it, it would be in good keeping if we were to perhaps lay it on the table until our next meeting, which would give you time to digest. Just a suggestion. Steve, please.
Yeah, I would like to move to lay it on the table
After hearing from Steve.
after hearing from Steve.
And Steve's going to suggest something different than that, actually. Yeah. Steve's going to suggest this is exactly what the board asked Barb to do, and that now we have come back to you with the exact language the board asked us to come back to. And so Barb's not here because we told her to do her kids' events tonight. And so this is exactly what you guys asked for. I'm going to ask you to move forward with it.
I'm really okay with it.
Yeah. He's got his motion on the floor.
I never completed my motion.
No second.
No second.
And he
Well, you
said-
moved, but there wasn't a second. So there either needs to be a second or the motion needs to be withdrawn.
Would you,
Or no,
could,
die for lack of a second.
Okay.
the motion dies for the lack of a second.
I would then move to approve the revision of policy 443.7 youth gangs and the deletion of 443.7 Rule 1 disciplinary actions for specific gang-related activities for final reading.
And is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
And those opposed? Motion carries. Policy 452, student aid programs for second reading, please.
Move approval of the deletion. Second. However we say that.
Discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
And those opposed? Motion carries. Next up, we have personnel recommendations, and please refer to Exhibit A that was also on the table when you walked in here this evening.
Of Exhibit A.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. Discussion? John, please.
Just a quick notation. So this is the time of the year when we see staff taking retirement, early retirement, retirements after in front of us, we're seeing 22 years, 33, 34, 38, 34 again. So massive number of years of service to the district. Yes, a 45. Oh my gosh, how could they possibly do that? Converse grade 1. Oh my gosh, what are we doing? So I think we need to acknowledge that. We'll see more. Todd told us there were
56 from all units.
56 at this point and still counting. So, you know, there's lots of reasons for retirement. We'll wish them well, and we'll have to figure out what we do without their wonderful presence in the district, but to say thanks for sure.
Thank you, John. Anybody else? It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
And those opposed? At this point, then, I would like to move us back to the items we held in abeyance, which were the co-op agreements for both soccer and hockey. Let's move and discuss soccer first. Any further discussion? John Winkleman, please.
Can I just ask, so I appreciate getting this, to see this. I guess I'm wondering, is it possible to approve this for a year with the option to renew for a second year, as opposed to a locked-in for a second year? I agree that I don't know that stuff will happen, but I certainly know that the budget from the state is totally up in the air, and I think it would be unrealistic to lock into a contract when we don't even know what they're gonna give us. So, is it an option?
They are 2-year agreements, and I don't know the fact that if we can do it 1 year. When you apply to the WIA, it specifically, if I can speak, says 2 years to renew it.
I guess, I'm sorry, some people know I'm not a fan of the WIA controlling our lives, so if I would move approval to this, I would move approval with the caveat that our motion indicates that we will retain the option to get out after a year, should the state budget cause us to do that.
There is language in the contract about the termination, however.
Just follow up on what John just said. The bottom line is you do apply to the WIA for a 2-year agreement, but the district has within its own right to make a 1-year contract with the others. So you're okay in both cases.
Okay, cool.
Any further discussion?
Turn your mic on.
John, are you saying that is a motion you would like to make then with that caveat?
Exactly what Steve said, right? So I could agree to a 2-year agreement with WIA as long as we have a contract that says that we can get out in a year if we need to. And that's what it is, so.
Are you formally making that motion?
Sure, I'm formally making that motion.
And is there a second to
Second.
the motion? Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
And those opposed? Motion carries. Next, let's move to the co-op agreement for girls hockey.
Move approval.
Question I have on budget. So page 70 budget, it talks about some equipment cost. Why do we, and it's going to be specific, why do we purchase helmets for some sports and not for others? And how do we determine what equipment we buy?
Well, we have a standalone program for the boys and the co-op for the girls, and the schools have agreed to only fund the very basic costs, and they share everything else. And equipment is part of that. The shared is not part of that agreement.
Right, but under the budget, it says that, applicable to the district instructional cost, applicable service support facility, and some equipment costs, but it doesn't specify what equipment? And we all know hockey equipment can be very expensive, so.
Right, most of the players buy their own equipment. In hockey, it's very unique. It's not like football where the district buys helmets for the entire team, shoulder pads. It's very specific to the hockey players who've grown up with that equipment all their lives.
Maybe this is a discussion that we can have when we talk about athletics as a whole, because I think that at least I have some question on why we buy some safety equipment for some sports and not for others. But can we get clarity on what we're committed to in this contract when it says some equipment?
Some equipment is virtually none. We buy hockey pucks. That's equipment. We don't buy sticks. We don't buy-
Jerseys, are they?
We do have our own jerseys that the school owns. The kids do not buy their own jerseys.
So we supply those.
But we actually are doing jerseys, correct?
We have jerseys.
Because if we look at the financial statement, it says we don't, so I guess we're better than we say we are.
Right.
Okay. Always a great place to be. Any other discussion? And the fact that code of conduct's not included in any of these, it reverts back to the code of conduct or athletic code of the individual school district, correct? And then with the overarching WIAA as a baseline
Correct.
that everybody must be at.
Correct.
Outstanding. John Winkleman, please.
So just to clarify, the motion is the same as the previous agreement, right? We can go to the 2-year WIA, but 1-year contract? Same concept, is that, who made the motion? Yes?
I made the motion.
Are you good with that?
Sure.
Good with that, cool.
Yep.
And then I have one other part of my question. Sorry, it's also in the budget question, so, we use the Janesville Ice Arena for a bunch of times, 37 times, and it's almost twice as much as it is to use the Beloit Ice Arena. I guess if we are looking to cut costs and we're looking everywhere, I would suggest that if that's possible, that would be great, because it's twice as expensive. I know the Janesville kids want to play on some of their own home ice, but there's only 3 of them. And there's lots of kids from other places, so perhaps we could consider that. I won't make it
Right,
into
and
a motion, but.
there's limited ice time in every facility,
Yeah.
and we try to get as much ice time as we can here, because it is cheaper.
Yep.
It's been moved and seconded, seeing no further discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
And those opposed? Motion carries. That does bring us to discussion items of interest for consideration at future board meetings.
No, did we do personnel, Rex?
Yep. Yep.
Oh.
Seeing none, announcement of future board meeting dates. Committee meetings will be held on April the 9th. That will include finance, transportation, property, curriculum and instruction, and policy and personnel. And next business meeting shall be held on April the 23rd, 2013. With that, we are adjourned, and reminded board members that we will be coming out of recess back in the superintendent's office immediately following our adjournment. With that, we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Do we do anything with the laptop?
No more than 10